Hi knitters, here we are at the end of the Vanessa Cowl, and it's been a lot of fun. I hope you guys have enjoyed it as much as I have, but I did want to say a brief note. I did change the pattern the afternoon of the 20th. So if you downloaded the pattern the morning of the 20th, Friday the 20th, you'll want to go back in. I added a few more rows. I just was a little uncomfortable with the length and I wanted it. So I added just a few more rows. So you'll want to make sure you have the updated pattern and to finish off. But it's been fun. It's been a lot of fun. And I'm here to show you how to graft it together. And one more thing about the length. It should be 60 inches in length after it's been blocked. And if you are knitting with, if you're knitting with wool, I have you stop short about 2 inches because wool will stretch when blocked. And I didn't want you to have it, if it's too loose, it kind of looks a little funny. So I wanted it right at 60 inches. So I have you stop at 58 inches and then it will block those 2 extra inches. If you have used an acrylic or an acrylic blend, you will want to go ahead and repeat some of the rows in order to get it to that 60-inch length, because it will not, acrylic will not block like wool will block out. So I suggest repeating a few rows from chapter 3. You can also repeat a few rows from chapter 2 if you like those better, whatever you want to do. And then I also suggest when you repeat the rows from either chapter 3 or chapter 2 that you change the colors up. In other words, the color that was the background, you use as the foreground, and the foreground color you use as the black background. So for instance, in this section right here, I would use the blue as the background and the papaya as the little design in that. So it just helps to change things up and keep it different if you have to repeat any of the rows. So I have mine. I was also going to suggest, if you are uncertain about how your cowl is going to block out, and if you are going to get that 2 inches in extra length, go ahead and just put a little rubber band on your needles and go ahead and block it. You don't even have to take all of your stitches off your needles. I didn't. I wanted to double check and make sure that this came out correctly before I put it together, because once you graft it together, it's going to be really difficult to get it undone. So I just put a little rubber band around my needles. I plunged it, soaked it in the water. Now, of course, I didn't leave it soaking for very long, but a little bit of water will not hurt your needles at all. So, and I went ahead and blocked mine just to make sure. I probably will go ahead and block it a second time just to even out things after I graft it together. So if you're unsure at all, block it first before you graft it together, and then when you can always add a couple of rows if you want it longer. But once you graft it together, you can't really do that very easily. So you can, but it's a pain. So anyways, just that little tip. It won't hurt anything if you go ahead and block it. If you're not afraid, graft it together and block it just once, because that certainly is the easiest. But anyways, so here we are. Here is the end. And I have stopped. I have my main color ready to go. And I have taken out about, I think I measured out 2 yards of tail. And you want a nice long tail because it does take more yarn than you think it does to get all the way around. So, but first what we're going to do is we're going to come back to the beginning here, and we're going to start to pick up the stitches and then unravel it. So Here we go. I'm going to take a second 16-inch circular needle, size 5, and what you want to do, it's a little hard here right at the beginning, but you're going to want to pick up the right leg of the stitch. Okay, and here we go again. Right leg of the stitch. This one got a little felted. And then this one, right leg of the stitch. Here we go. And then this one. So we're picking up each right leg of every stitch as we go around. So you want your needle to go right through and grab that little right leg. If you want to see it a little more closely, this is the right leg and this is the left leg of the stitch. Here is a better example down here. This is the right leg and that's the left leg of the stitch. So I am just picking up the right leg of each stitch and I will go all the way around. Okay, I made it all the way around to back to the beginning, and I counted both sides, both stitches, to make sure I had 96 stitches, and I do. So here we go. Now, if you remember when we did our provisional cast on, we tied a knot or a series of knots in one tail, and the other tail we left plain. And the reason why we did that, because we wanted to remember that this is not the end that we will open up and start to unravel. So we will open up the plain end, the tail that has no knot in it. And here are my extra crochet stitches, and I will just take a large tapestry needle here and unpick that so that I can start to pull it, and then you can start to pull it, and you can just start to pull if the provisional cast on right out from underneath those stitches, and the stitches will be left on your needle. Too simple, right? Too simple. So this is why we use cotton, and I did use cotton, but even so, some of the wool threads want to get stuck with it, but here we go. Too easy, right? Too easy. Yeah, that's what we like, nice and easy. Okay, and here we are back here. Let me just pull that piece out. See, it had a little, there we go. Okay. My knots are not wanting to pull through, of course. So I'm going to cut the knots off and pull it through the last little bit. There we go. We have the waistlet yarn, which now we can just totally discard. Now I'm going to get a tapestry needle that is a bit smaller than the one I was using, and that is also blunt, because it's easier for grafting things together. Then I'm going to orientate my piece here so that, let's see if I can show you when I'm done here getting this together. Okay, so what I've done is I folded it here somewhat in half, so that the side that does not have the seams, I call it the seam side, is facing up, and the seam side is just where you can see that little jog in the color stitches, and then this is the side that does not have that seam side. So it doesn't really matter, it's just that you want to have both beginning stitches together at the same point. So, and you're going to match up your piece just like this, right sides facing out, insides together, and we're going to get our really long tail here, and it's way off the shot of the camera here. We're going to thread our needle through, and I double it up a bit just to give me, here you can see I double it up a bit just to kind of shorten it as I work, because it is kind of hard to work with something that is so long, but it's worth it because you don't have to add another thing in. So I'm going to take my stitch marker off, and I'm going to go here and hold these together. Now the first little bit is a little bit fiddly, but it can be managed. You want to have your left hand needles together, and the right hand needles you can kind of just push out of the way. And what you want to do is set up your yarn. And what I do, your yarn is going to be coming from the front. You want it to be starting to come from the back. So I go ahead and just slip it through a loop here in the back, not a loop that's on the needle, but just a new loop that is underneath the stitch that's on the needle. So now I have it coming from the back. Okay. Now we're going to do the setup, or the next step in the setup, I should say. We're going to purl in the front. Okay, and then we're going to knit in the back. So we're going to knit this stitch. So we're going to have to go between the needles, and then we're going to slip it through as if to knit. And I want to make sure I didn't splice it. Okay, pull it through. Okay, now we can start our pattern. So we're going to knit this stitch off, and then we're going to go through the next stitch as if to purl, and we're going to leave it there. Okay, now on the back needle we're going to purl off, and we're going to knit the next stitch and leave it on. And pull it. Now I'm going to bring my yarn back to the front. I'm going to knit off. I'm going to purl and leave that next stitch. Okay, now the back needle I'm going to purl off. I'm going to knit the next stitch, go into the next stitch as if to knit, and leave it on the needle. And I leave it somewhat loose right in here, and I go back and tighten that up after I have done about 10 stitches. So here we go. On the front needle again, we're going to knit and take it off. Then we're going to go in as if to purl and leave it on the needle. Each stitch has to have 2 things done to it in order to make a stitch in between the back and the front needles. So if you keep that in mind, you'll be good. Okay, the back, we are going to purl off, and we're going to knit and leave it. So you kind of get into a rhythm. You're constantly working on these 2 left needles, and you're constantly just leaving the right hand needles alone. So again, the front needle here, we're going to knit off, and then we're going to purl the next stitch and leave it on. On the back needle, we're going to purl off, we're going to knit and leave it on. Okay, I'll do a few more and then I'll come back and show you guys. So a couple of things I wanted to show you here that as I go along, after I've done a series of stitches, I go ahead and tighten those up. So to tighten them up, you're just going to pull first the right leg and then the left leg of the stitch. So here's the right leg of the stitch. I pull it nice, not tight, but nice and firm. And then the left leg of the stitch. And then the right leg. And then the left leg. And I am pulling the newly made stitches, the stitches that I have made by grafting or kitchening these two pieces together. So those are the stitches that I'm pulling. Here we go. This is the last stitch that I just made. I can go ahead and pull that. And the other thing that I wanted to show you, that when you need to turn the work, so I need to rotate this to the right, you go ahead and you rotate the whole thing as a whole, keeping these pieces together. Here is my left hand needles together. These are the right hand that I'm just kind of ignoring. So you can just go ahead, you can see, and rotate the whole piece together. So anyways, okay, I am going to Kitchener some more stitches together. Okay, knitters, here we are back at the beginning where we started, and you can see there's a little bit of a difference in the stitches, but that will change once you block it out. So that will smooth out a bit. And what I'm going to do to end this off is I'm going to slip my needle underneath these stitches. Just run them underneath if you can see it sticking out there. You want to run it underneath the same colored stitches and pull it through. And then I'm going to run it underneath another set. Looks like I've done about 2, 4, 5, 6, so probably about 12 stitches total. Pull that. Now I am going to get it just the tail to pop underneath, I'm going to pull it tightly a little bit, and then it will pull it like that, and then it will spring back underneath there. So you can see it is fairly hidden underneath there. So I hope that helps you guys and helps you feel a little bit more confident about grafting this piece together. But it has been so much fun to knit this with you guys and do this as a project all together. And I can't wait to see you all and your finished cowls. So until then, happy knitting.